Hi, friends. Welcome to a lovely afternoon slash evening slash, if you're in Hong Kong, not either of those things. I'm Ethan. This is my ride or die, Tom.
Oh,
We're here to talk to you about, well, two things. One is like we initially were talking about like summer plans and programs and projects, and we were thinking, as we were creating the content for this is about more than just summer. This is about thinking about who you want to be, yes, as a student potentially, but also as a counselor and parent outside of your summer plan. So we've expanded the title and the scope of this to be about extracurricular activities as well. And we're thinking of that broadly. Tom, most folks will have met you before, but if they haven't met you, will you just introduce yourself?
sure. So thanks to Ethan for having me. And hi, everyone. Happy to be here on this rainy Thursday afternoon. So my name is Tom Campbell. I use he, him pronouns. And I have been working at College SAI now for 3 years. And prior to that, I worked in college admissions and college counseling. So a total of 7 years on the admission side of the desk at College of the Holy Cross and Pomona College, and a year of college counseling in an independent school in Seattle. And then now I've been doing webinars, podcasts, blogs, YouTube, etc., working with students one-on-one at College SAI. So all the hats, all the vibes, and happy to be here. Thanks.
Good to hear. I'm gonna do a little share screen moment here. I'm gonna share this version, and then I'm going to hit presenter view. How's that? Good?
Looks great.
Look at these sweet slides that Tom created. You'll notice we've updated the title to Uncommon Extracurricular and Summer Experiences. And were you going to say something? Oh, I thought you were going to say something. Here's our agenda. I'm going to hand over the mic to Tom in just a couple minutes, and he's going to talk to you about, from the college admission perspective, how are extracurriculars and summer experiences evaluated? How are they seen? Why are they important? Are summer experiences viewed differently? And then we're going to talk about the PERMA model of well-being, which we'll get into and explain in just a little bit. And then he's going to pass it back to me, and I'm going to walk you through a really fun new resource that we've created that's going to help you figure out what you want, think a little bit about what colleges want, and we're going to brainstorm some experiences. And if you're a counselor watching this, as many of you are, and you're like, this seems like great stuff to share with my students. Guess what? You're going to get all the slides, a copy version that you can like put logos on, like you can put your logo in the bottom left corner and present this stuff to students if you think it's useful. So that's part of what we're up to here. That's part of like the stated explicit agenda here is like share resources that you can share with students. And we're going to walk you through a process that's going to help you do it. Yes, to the 12 students who are on this, but also hopefully for some of the parents who are watching this, you can share this with your students as well. Tom, kicking it to you, and I'm going to be shall I be your slide person? You just
Sure. Yeah.
great, go.
All right. So extracurricular experiences in college edition, what you need to know. Ethan, next slide, please. Okay. So before we kind of dive into, brainstorming and ideating around what is the most strategic, or, I sometimes, even when I say that word, sometimes I get a little recoily because I believe very much that, having been on the other side of the admission desk, this process can be definitely strategic in many ways, and in order to position yourself and to what I call translate your high school experience in a language that makes sense to someone who's reading and evaluating it. So that I think is a big piece of this process. But also ideally at College SAI, we are about ease, purpose, and joy. And sometimes we actually had our staff retreat a couple days ago, and some of us were kind of, we had a philosophical discussion about, is joy really what we're all about? But we really do feel like, especially after we walk through this presentation today, that we're trying to kind of work out and think of ways to reframe just the standard way of doing college admissions or doing high school. So that way, ideally, it is a little more in alignment for the 12 students with your values as well as your roles and identities. But we think it's important to kind of go through like the baseline, like pragmatic nuts and bolts of generally what colleges are looking for and how they're thinking about extracurriculars in the grand scheme of your candidacy, which, as you know, involves lots more than just what you do outside the classroom. So in general, from my experience working in admissions, from conversations with lots of different colleagues of mine, statistically, most students in high school in the US are involved in between 5 and 7 extracurricular activities throughout their high school experience. So these may be experiences that they started out early on and then left behind because they, decided, like me, I did freshman tennis, It was horrible. It was on my resume for college. Never did it after my first year. That's very common for students to dabble and explore when they're in ninth grade. And then ideally solidify 3 to 4, maybe what I call like core activities that are the bulk of the way that they're spending their time as a high school student, especially towards the second half of high school, right? Where ideally you're moving from solely being like a member of different clubs, organizations, and teams. And ideally you're identifying areas where you can step into roles that allow you to take more leadership and or initiative and ways to impact your community. These are just a list, just in case you're curious and haven't been on the Common application. These are the categories that generally most activities fall under when students are putting them into their activities list, which is the way that they're usually read and evaluated by admission officers. And as you can see, there's a really broad spectrum as to what how students can spend their time as high school students. And I would argue that any of these categories here have equal ways for you to live out your values, to cultivate experiences that colleges are really excited by. But then always know that there's that other club activity if something that you do is more niche or outside the box. In fact, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Usually things that are outside the box and outside the norm, which is the theme of this webinar, how to be maybe more uncommon in this admission landscape where there's lots of different debate clubs and sports teams and theater involved, offered by most high schools in the US. So a lot of the theme of today's webinar is going to be kind of shifting towards that more other category and maybe some of these more uncommon experiences that don't quite fit into these neat boxes that are set up by the Common App.
Oops,
If
sorry.
you want more, yeah, no, that's great. That's perfect. I was going to say next slide.
Cool.
If you are more curious kind of about what I said, the more nuts and bolts FAQ questions about college admissions and extracurricular activities, how many should I do? How should it be different in ninth grade, 10th, 11th, 12th? If you're a counselor and want a guide to give to your students, we do have a very robust guide that includes example activities, activities and categories for each of the Common App areas that I put before, and just guidance about how to approach it in a more healthy way. So this guide here, which again is included in the slides, is a great one to kind of get the full picture of extracurriculars beyond the scope of this webinar. Next slide, please. This is just some data that we often like to start out some of our presentations with data from the National Association for College Admission Counseling, also known as NACAC. And every year they do a poll of different colleges and universities. In the case here, you see 185 different colleges in that number column responded to a poll where they were asked essentially, of all the aspects of the holistic college application process, what are the areas that are most important in your process? And as you can see, academics, especially the types of courses you've taken, how you've achieved in them, are definitely the area that is kind of first and foremost in terms of considerable importance for all colleges and universities across the spectrum, no matter kind of what type they are. And we highlighted where extracurriculars fall under that umbrella. So again, we want to reiterate that, sometimes people are like, oh, can I like do this extracurricular thing that's going to make up for like all the straight C's I had in 10th grade? And, I want to go to Yale. I think grounding your reality and calibrating your expectations based on this data is really important. However, extracurricular activities, for this, column that you see where it says considerably important, sometimes people are surprised to see that only 6.5% of these colleges are marking extracurricular activities as considerably important. And from our podcast info, we did a podcast, or Ethan did a podcast with David Hawkins, who kind of is the staff member at NACAC, who oversees this poll and this data collection. And according to him, it tends to be those more highly selective schools that lots of students are interested in, that get a lot of national attention, that many people who come to college SAGI are looking for support and better understanding how to position themselves. That 6.5% tends to be reflective of those more selective schools. But on the next slide, something that we've kind of really dug into the past year or two in terms of our materials and our approach is this kind of ambiguous, elusive term of positive character attributes, which we also have a lot of content on our website, including podcast episodes and blog guides. But what we wanted to do, at College SAGI was equip students, families, and counselors with a little more of a digestible framework. And when colleges say this term, positive character attributes, where do they find them? Oftentimes it's in essays and applications. But a lot of times they can assess and gather these qualities, these character attributes through students' extracurricular experiences, particularly when they choose to write about them in various spaces of their application, whether that's descriptions on the Common App, or potentially supplemental essays about areas where you showed leadership or initiative, or where you gave back to your community. So even though extracurriculars themselves are lower, oftentimes they're vehicles for you to be able to explore parts of yourself that you would like to up-level, demonstrate qualities that college are looking for, and ideally also cultivate some equipping yourself for skills that you can kind of carry with you far beyond this college process, which I know is really the immediate goal right now. But some of the tips we're going to give you they have a payoff far beyond the near present. So kind of zeroing in a little bit from extracurriculars and zeroing in on summer. Sometimes, people wonder, are summer experiences evaluated differently in the college admission process than school year-based activities? And I do want to reiterate that college admission officers like to see something called consistent engagement. More about that in a second. And so engaging in your own immediate community in your school environment, or, in a community, whether that's a CrossFit gym, or I had a student that I worked with who was really involved with this volunteer organization that was primarily staffed by Army Reserve cadets. So it was a chance for her to kind of build community very consistently with people who had a really different kind of life experience than her, and was a nice kind of addition to her school community. So sustained engagement with something over multiple years is definitely something that colleges do like to see in students' backgrounds. It's evidence that they'll be engaged in a sustained way at that college campus community, more so than if they had a lot of what we call like one-off activities, where it's, I did this summer program and this short-term experience, and there's not as much consistency. But summer experiences can be a great way to dive into things like intellectual curiosity, to really kind of explore something that you don't have quite as much time to explore during the school year because of juggling classes, sports team, all those commitments that you're trying to balance out. So on the next slide, you'll see just some data from a couple years ago, from this website called Everything Summer, where essentially they asked colleges how significant or how valuable do you find some of the different common ways that students spend their summer that you see on the left side of the screen. And what I want to really reiterate is, remember from the slide I had before where it was 6.5% of colleges consider extracurriculars considerably important. Zeroing in on summer, we see this range of, internships are listed as 68% most important. Even the lowest category here is 48%. So you're not seeing like, oh, internships are 90% most important, community service 1%. We don't care about community. As you can see from these ranges, there isn't this real drastic chasm in terms of the ways that colleges evaluate these experiences. And remember, these are falling under the umbrella of your candidacy that already is a small percentage of the total parts of your application. On the next slide, something I want to reiterate is, we have a lot of students and families who come to us saying things like, well, I'm really interested in doing like summer programs, or I want to do this residential thing at Harvard's campus, or I'm applying to this selective XYZ. Those programs can definitely be interesting, especially if you have an academic interest that you really want to cultivate, or you want an experience to be on a college campus. But we're really big at college SCI at de-emphasizing the need to what we sometimes people in the profession refer to this as pay-to-play experiences. There are lots of ways to stand out to colleges, to explore your values, to explore things that you care about that don't involve spending a lot of money, or maybe no money at all. And that's a real big theme of today's session. And as you can see, according to this poll, colleges are actually even saying that independent research, which does not have to be through a formal offered paid research program, it can be something that you do on your own, doesn't necessarily have to have a professor or college affiliation. Although if you have explored that, if you're interested in that, shows great initiative, is even looked at slightly more favorably to formal academic programs. So regardless of what you choose on this list, there's no bad options. They're all great ways to explore things. And this statistically, not that much of a difference, but I really like that, there is that kind of slight distinction and preference, shall we say, for things that are independent and self-driven, the big theme of what we're going to talk about. All right, so that's a summary, just what I said before. You'll have that on the slides going forward. So, I don't know if many of you attended Ethan's webinar a couple of weeks ago, but it was titled something along the lines of why I'm changing my approach to college essays and applications. It definitely got a lot of buzz, right? Because the whole idea of like, what, you're changing things? Like the book that I bought is not valuable. No, the book's still valuable. We still stand by, the resources and the catalog of what College Essay Guy has put together over the past, decade or so. I would say give or take. Not to date, Ethan. But this is kind of, I'd say, one of the initial iterations of guidance that we provided to students around how to spend their summer more meaningfully, and align their summer experiences with positive well-being and positive psychology overall. So our initial kind of blog guide, which you'll find linked in this slide deck, was really rooted in the concept of PERMA, which is a theory from Martin Seligman. I believe it was around 2012 where it was kind of solidified. But it kind of assesses that these 5 areas, positive emotion, engagement, relationships, meaning, and accomplishment, are kind of the recipes to a meaningful, fulfilling, happy life long term. So the idea of kind of having summer experiences that allow for that definitely is a great way to just start thinking about summer and what it can be for you as a student. We have a few examples that you'll also find on the blog guide here, to kind of walk you through what summer could look like. And I already kind of alluded to a few of them, but just to kind of go through them pretty quickly, spending some time in your summer outside of maybe a formal commitment or a plan that you have for yourself to just engage with things that you enjoy, whether that's the outdoors or travel. I know I really enjoy spending summer months that way, and definitely did as a high school student. There's a kind of neat resource that we wanted to link in here called Atlas Obscura, which kind of does a little bit of mapping or kind of like hidden gems in your local area. So again, not needing to travel and spend tons of money on flights or hotels, just thinking about how to learn more and absorb more from the immediate surrounding around you is definitely something that we encourage you to think about doing. The next one, please, engage summer. So engaging kind of deeply in self-reflection during summer, again, when you have a little bit more time, is definitely something we encourage you to carve out time for, right? This isn't an area that's often built into most high school curricula. So to dig deep into who you are and what your interests are, so whether that's doing a test like the Enneagram, which our colleague Andy is really against, but I personally find a lot of value in it, or some exercises that we've started to develop, such as the roles and identities exercise, to get a better sense of what are all the parts that make you who you are, how are they changing, how are they evolving, and how can they maybe influence the decisions that you make with the limited time you have as a high school student to make an impact, to show initiative, to do these things that make high school fulfilling and attract the attention of college admission officers. Reading is a great way to do that. I loved in the chat when people put how they're spending their rainy days. Ideally, people had more time for that, myself included, or even taking advantage of, instead of streaming, the lighter fare that exists that is more tempting on Netflix, Hulu, HBO Max, etc. Maybe exploring things like Docu Plus or Discovery Plus podcasts, kind of learning more as you're streaming based on a topic that's of intellectual interest. Next one, relational summer. So building positive relationships and community with people who have some form of commonality with you is a huge part of living a well-meaning life. So kind of like the example that I shared before of CrossFit, which is something that I did for a long time, still kind of peripherally do. It's the student that I mentioned who worked primarily with Army Reserve members through her extracurricular, her service placement. It's great to kind of find some, I'd say, areas of community during the summer outside of your school community, because it often is a chance to maybe learn from people who are different than you, learn from people that you're not surrounded by, 3/4 of the time as a high school student. And it can often be really exciting to kind of know people who come from different walks of life and start to build those common threads. Fourth one is meaningful summer. So service to others is a theme that we're going to touch on in some of the exercises that Ethan will walk you through. But definitely giving back to people outside of your own self is a great way to both make you feel better from a positive psychology standpoint. And, you see this line here, 2 birds, 1 stone. Our colleague Alex likes to call it 2 birds, 1 scone. If you want an alternative that's less violent, I'd say. I think when you think about service and how to spend your time during your summer, some things to think about, and I really kind of want to underscore this last bullet here, which is um, as you kind of actually do the direct service, right? Maybe you start off as a high school student, you volunteer at a food bank. Maybe you can kind of push that further and kind of fold in a little bit of an intellectual curiosity element to this concept of serving others, where you look into why are there food deserts that are more prevalent in certain parts of my town or city more than others? What's causing to that? What are maybe some of the systemic issues connected to it? And that can inform ways that you can take more initiative to address issues more head on that stem from that kind of entry point of providing direct service, which is a great way to meet people where they're at, understand, spend your time doing something that's outside of your own bubble. So regardless of if you're trying to tackle, direct service needs or more systemic policy-based needs, there's definitely all room at the table for people who want to kind of accomplish both goals. And then the last one here in this PERMA model is an accomplished summer. So the accomplishment of kind of really nailing and doing well in a course online over the summer or at a community college. I know someone who did Spanish language courses over the summer, and they had a practicum component, which is a really great way for the student to kind of, she was like, I was in a classroom setting with people who were literally from all different industries and ages and backgrounds. And it was so different than my school classes, which are mostly people who look and are the same age as me. So not only can, diving into kind of some of these more accomplishing, self-satisfying, getting that check mark at the end of diving into something for a few weeks, that can definitely, you can also feel accomplished by working, getting your hands dirty. I did part-time jobs in food service over the summer for several years. So these are all great ways to kind of get that feeling of accomplishment. Ethan.
Yeah. Handing the mic over. I'm so curious to hear from folks. I think the chat's on, assuming the chat's on, if you all have taken an interesting online course, because I'm always looking for recommendations for interesting online courses, but Masterclass is so darn cheap now, and it's really easy to I think it's like $100 a year or something, which is different from what it used to be like per class. So if anybody has any cool online courses, feel free to share. I think the chat's on, we can make sure, but if not, Rebecca, maybe we can turn it on behind the scenes. Okay. So here we go. How do we, because I love the practical, how do we come up with uncommon extracurricular summer experiences that are true to you? Here's the process. And again, counselors, in case you missed the opening, we're giving you these slides. We'd love to have you use them. Feel free. All right. This is my fancy image that I drew yesterday because I was like, we need an image that looks something like this. And then Mark on our team was like, what if we just use that? And I was like, great. So we're brainstorming something that's going to meet the needs of stuff that you value and stuff that colleges value. We're brainstorming experiences that are here in the middle. Okay. So step one, and counselors, parents, I want you to please do this as give yourself the gift of being the student right now. I want you to pick 3 to 5 values that you want to explore outside school or outside work over the summer. And let me just throw this into the chat. I'm just going to put this into the chat real quick. Reed is asking, will students receive slides? If you give them to them, feel free. Anybody who's attending this webinar has made the slides. But take a look at this values list. Actually, here, let me just show what happens. When you click this thing, when you click make a copy, it's going to create a copy in your Google Drive. And this will be your own copy here. So you can, so I want you to pick 3 to 5 values right now that you're like, I want to experience more of that this summer. And throw it into the chat. Pick 3 values. My values are personal growth, family, and an adventure. Yeah, I think adventure is one of them. That that third one surprised me. So Andrea's saying humor, nature, family. Cool. You don't know, Kate, you don't need to pull over. Keep driving. You're good. Janine's saying fun, success, and balance. Cool.
Just a note for attendees. If you wouldn't mind, if you have questions that you want us to answer, we hopefully will have time to cover them. But questions are best. It's easier for us to keep track of them in the Q&A box, which you should see at the middle of your screen. when Ethan's like put something in the chat, that's usually kind of like call and response. So just if you could try, that would be helpful to us.
Okay, great. That's step one. Whoops. And you've already done this. You've shared your top 3 values with your group or in the chat. And we've kind of structured the slides so that you can lead this as a workshop if you like. All right. Step 2, what are colleges looking for? Well, we spent over the past year analyzing lots and lots of different college websites like this one, for instance. So some of you have seen this, but if you go to Caltech's website, what we look for, they're very explicit. They look for a love of math, and they look for resilience, and they look for collaborative spirit, and they look for an outlet or single-minded determination. So we looked at bunches and bunches and bunches of schools' websites, 100, and we're going to be like doing this a second pass with even more hundreds. And we came up with this list of what we're calling admission nutrients. And these aren't to say like the 10 commandments of college applications. We don't want to posit that these are those. But think of them more as like, if you're trying to put together a quote unquote healthy application, a well-balanced application, you might want to think about these qualities. So they are these things. Colleges, broadly speaking, are looking for intellectual curiosity. They're looking for evidence that you are committed to, interested in service to others, that you are other-oriented. Leadership or initiative is something that's big. They're also looking for evidence of collaboration. And finally, Tom mentioned earlier, consistent engagement. So what these represent also, if you look at the little diagram, the beautiful Venn diagram on the left, is that this is some combination of what colleges want with the aforementioned qualities that give life meaning, see PERMA. And we also cross-reference these with qualities. We did a bunch of research on what employers are looking for. And so these qualities right here, which you can see represented on the right side, are kind of like the middle of the Venn diagram with all 3 of these things. So rest assured that these are things that aren't just like what colleges want, but what employers are looking for and stuff that's going to make you like, I don't know, have a cooler life and stuff. So next part, we're going to try to brainstorm 5 ideas that intersect your values, the ones you've named in the chat, with college's values. In other words, these things. And we want to make sure like 1 or 2 of these ideas are fun. And by the way, again, parents and counselors, I want you to literally do this for yourself, imagining your own summer, and imagine not that you're applying to college, but that you are somehow weaving in, I don't know, intellectual curiosity or some evidence of like collaboration. Okay. So, I'll let you decide what that looks like. And again, 1 to 2 that are fun, that are sort of in that pleasant summer category. And then I felt the need to say this, that you want to also weave fun in because colleges like to see fun. They're also interested in you having balance and self-care. Just to give evidence of this really quick, if you go back to this thing from Caltech, like they put at the end, they're like an outlet. They're like, great, we know that you like to do academic stuff, but self-care and having someplace to turn is really, really important.
Very quick, funny, like 10-second story about that.
Yeah,
When I was at Pomona, we had an essay prompt that we added to our catalog of supplemental essays because we were like, these all seem really like serious. And we want to give students something that's more fun and lighthearted. So we asked students what's their favorite way to eat a potato. And the amount of emails and like panic that we caused unintentionally because people thought there was like an ulterior motive was concerning to us. And it definitely made us realize how stressful this process is. So when colleges say that they're looking for fun and they have like lighthearted prompts and things, like they really are trying to garner
really mean it. They really mean it.
I recognize the tension there. So
yeah, thanks for naming that. So we could just like tell you to come up with ideas, but wouldn't it be nice if someone just created a huge menu of ideas and I don't know, organized it by values? And wouldn't it be even better if those ideas wove in the admission nutrients? Drum roll, please. Here we go. Here is a giant list of 100 plus summer and extracurricular ideas based on your values. So here we go, throwing it into the chat. Take a look at this list and you can use like Control or Command F and you can pick your thing. So let's say, well, I mentioned personal development growth. So here are 3 ideas of things that I could do. For example, live like a character from a book or movie for a day. So I could choose one fictional or historical figure and embody their habits, speech, etc. Maybe I could learn to do something that I've always assumed I wasn't that kind of person for. Like, I don't know, I could probably take a cooking class. I don't think I'm that kind of person, but that would be an example of that. So let's spend like literally 2 minutes perusing this list, and I want to hear some interesting slash wild ideas that are either inspired by this list or totally not on this list, but things that you could do this summer that would be A, connected to your values, and B, just to go back to that Venn diagram, things that colleges value, quote unquote. And again, I'll sort of keep this, it's these qualities right here. Actually, Tom, would you mind just throwing the nutrients into the chat so that I can share the other page? Thanks. So let's say your values are inspiration, humor, compassion. What are those qualities? And see if you could throw them into the chat. We'll do this for a couple minutes. And I'll say also, don't feel like you have to overthink this. We're going for quantity just as much as quality. And I often say that with students when we're doing sort of brainstorming like this, is like throwing stuff at the wall works too, because it could lead to something cool. Ooh, love it. What else? I'll just read from the chat since some folks are driving maybe or on a walk. Uh, so nature, health awareness, spiritual, walking the El Camino Trail this summer alone and meeting new people. Ah, you wove in collaboration. Great. Learning meditation, riding the bus, seeing what I learn, creating a daily list of joys that I experienced. I'm noticing there's lots of you language. I'm hoping that y'all do this with I language, like stuff that person writing this would do. Trying yoga again. Yay. I see you. I celebrate you. I hear you, Sophie. Then see if you can get really specific. So like life skills, independent life skills, like what are some specific life skills that you'd like to develop? Joining pre-college programs related to the major I want to do, and leadership while leaving time to hang out with my friends and watch my favorite TV shows. Great. And so already like hopefully, Nora, there's like a seed planted to be looking for what are those opportunities for leadership or initiative with these pre-college programs that you're potentially interested in doing. Yeah. Knitting, says Amanda. Janine says, fun, doing a fun activity to engage yourself. Yes, but what is the activity? That's what we're brainstorming here. And for those of you who missed it, in case you did miss it, we've got this huge list, I'll put it in the chat once more, of ideas that hopefully will inspire you. So let me just show that list again real quick, just so that folks can see that thing exists. So check this out. So for example, if music is on your list, maybe you'll rearrange a song in a totally different genre, or create a sound map of your neighborhood. Or maybe you learn the story behind a song that moves you. Or play a soundtrack to life game with friends. Maybe, for instance, helping others is on your list. So an idea might be something like leave encouraging notes in unexpected places. And in the spirit of collaboration, do it with some friends. Organize a one good deed relay. Do something helpful and ask the recipient to pay it forward. Find a way to help someone without asking, how can I help? Here we go. Erica's got one. Take a theater class to improve my public speaking skills, feed my love of learning, and decompress. Great. I think I could see intellectual curiosity in there. I could see collaboration. Definitely initiative if you're taking theater. Oh, I love this, Sean. Send a thoughtful, appreciative note of a sentence or two to a different person each day. I mean, do that. I imagine that if you did that for a week, it would start build momentum. I imagine if I did that for a year, my whole life would change. I love this. Let's see, spend a day filming my dog for a day to see what they're up to. Love it, Erica. This is great. Okay, now we're cooking. All right. So those are some examples. We've already written down some ideas, which is lovely. Now, If you were to do this, if you did these experiences, which parts of yourself would you be developing? Now we're segueing a little bit into like college application land, but what quality would you be demonstrating to colleges? So now I'm talking about this whole roles and identities exercise. So I want to put this in the chat. Here's a second resource. So once you hit make a copy on this doc, it's going to bring this list of roles and identities up. Now, here's my new question for sharing in the chat. Which role or identity could you potentially begin to develop even more? So for example, Kate has said, saying yes, leaping at new opportunities, invites challenges, especially ones that feel outside my comfort zone. Okay, great. So now taking that, ask yourself, what role or identity would that develop in me? Is that the adventurer? Is it the enthusiast? Is it the experimenter? So frame this now in terms of a role. Or if the values thing didn't really work for you and you're like, I don't know, I couldn't really think of any ideas based on my values, then pick a role or identity and think of an activity that you could do to enliven that, to express and explore that role or identity more. So maybe you're like, ooh, I'd love to develop the researcher side of myself. So in the chat, I'd love for you to share what's a way that you could explore that particular role or identity. So here's what this might look like. And I'll just give an example in the chat. Researcher. I'd like to finally work out my genealogy, my family genealogy, dating back to 1800. That would be like the researcher side of myself. And here's how I'd specifically do it. So your task right now, should you choose to accept it, is to come up with one role or identity and give one idea of a way that you could express or explore that side of yourself. And if you're like, oh, this is hard, Ethan, I can see the roles and identities, but I can't think of like how I would actually do that. Well, check this out. Here we go. Here's a list of summer and extracurricular ideas based on your roles and identities. I'll put this in the chat. So if, for example, you're an activist or you identify, or you want to be up-level your activist self, maybe you could host a difficult conversations dinner where you gather a small group of folks with different perspectives on an issue and just talk, listen to each other. Maybe if you're an adventurer, you decide to get deliberately lost somewhere within reason. If you're an advocate, maybe you decide there's a change maker that inspires you. You ask them, hey, could I shadow you for a day? Etc. So this is the same thing where you can sort of use Command F or Control F, and you can search for one of these. So you just use Command F, and I'm going to search for storyteller. Boom. Here are 5 ideas. Feel free to, by the way, copy these ideas and paste them into the chat if you're like vibing with the idea and you think it would be cool. I'll read some of these out loud that we've got coming through. So Jacqueline says, connector, that's the role or identity Jacqueline wants to maybe connect with, identify with. Write a handwritten and mailed note to people in my past to reconnect and start building bridges across borders. Lovely. A. Clooney says, storyteller. I'd start a group for poetry slam. We'd meet to talk about our ideas and styles and then organize and perform. Love it. Kate says, civic entrepreneur. Beautiful. I love when there's like multiple words for the identity. Making organic dog treats to sell at local establishments with proceeds going to spay and neuter clinics, ultimately addressing the deeper problem of overpopulation. Great. Planner. Here we go. Finding a messy process in my life. And what would that process be? I'm curious, Sophie, for you. And create a structured plan to streamline it. Which process would you streamline or update? Melinda says, I have a senior who just wrapped up this process and a junior who is about to embark on the college application process. This is great. Oh, okay. And then, you know what? If you're a parent watching this, like there's another exercise that I'll share on a future podcast, but you could also just go back to this and ask yourself, who do I want to be in this process? So if you're a parent watching this, look at this and go, are you going to be, I don't know, the researcher who's helping specifically with your student as they're researching colleges? Or are you just want to be the cheerleader to be like, hey, are you sleeping? Are you eating enough? Is there anything I can do? and you could just be the rah-rah person on the side? Are you the one helping to plan the college trips? Like, what role do you want to play? And make it explicit with your kid. Say, hey, I want to be this role or identity with you. How can I do that best? There's another exercise that I won't get into right now for parents, which is like, who do I not want to be? So like, for example, if you are really good at organizing things, and you love creating spreadsheets, ask your kid, hey, do you want me to play the organizer role or do you want to do that on your own? And just having a big conversation, because it could be that, some roles are really welcomed and other roles are like, you know what, Dad, I can do that. I'm anticipating my daughter saying this to me. Google Docs with docs all over the place over years. Sophie's saying, yeah, totally. Okay. So here's my challenge to you. And you can just do this once. And I'd love to just get a few folks sharing this in the chat. So what is a next step for one of the things that you wrote? So for example, you say, I want to plant a garden with vegetables. What's a next step that you could take this week to begin your garden planting, garden creation adventure? You could be like, hey, on Tuesday, I'm going to go to Home Depot and get some seeds, or whatever that is, get the soil, or I'm going to ask my mom or ask my, partner, hey, when can we go to the Home Depot and actually do this? It doesn't have to be Home Depot. Email Mrs. Clark to see if she could help me organize a food drive this month. That's an example of like, being the sort of change maker. So in the chat, I'd love to hear from a few folks. What's a next step that you could potentially take for one of the things that you wrote? You don't need to do it for everything that you wrote. Just give me one example. By the way, if we were in a group like setting, if we were in a room, I would have you turn to a partner and share this with somebody and be able to say it aloud. So I'm just kind of doing the virtual version where you share it aloud, quote unquote, in the larger group here. And whatever the thing is, the more that you can break it down into like the next step, I think the more doable it starts to feel. So there we go. Claire's got a great one. Check out the bus routes and schedule. That's something that you could do literally tonight. You could right now open up a new tab and search the bus routes and schedule. Beautiful. This is a good one from Marcy. To find olive orchards in Spain that allow visitors to join in. You could Google that tonight. I love that. So Osman, for this one, could you get even more specific? So you've noted working on a farm, or at least visiting one. What's the next action that you could take that would allow you to figure out which farm you would like to visit and potentially work on? Or what websites could you look at to potentially work at? What is that called, Tom, when people go to overseas and they work on farms and stuff? My friends use this.
Woofing.
Woofing, that's it.
I did that.
Check out, you did that?
Yeah.
Great. Okay, what was the first step? What's the first step that you would recommend Osman take if Osman is interested in woofing?
Yeah, look it up online, and there for different countries, there'll be like basically, I mean, at the time I did it, I actually feel like it was like a physical book. But I'm sure there's like an online, basically it's like a database or posting where they'll show you different areas in the country that basically are kind of like have like help wanted ads, like you used to see in a newspaper. And you can also search for like, I tried to find ones that had more to do with like building and architecture because that's what I was interested in. So I ended up living with a family who were like working on building like an upcycled, recycled house, with solar panels and things like that. So yeah, you can look at the posting and see kind of like what the role entails because it's not all just like farming in the literal sense.
And for those of you who are like, oh, I don't want to commit to this right now in front of all these 200 people, you do not have to literally commit to doing this thing. We're just brainstorming ideas. And in the spirit of a potluck, we're showing, hey, here's the idea that I came up with. And sort of, potentially starting to build some momentum, but also just giving a bunch of examples to each other. Great. Here's one from Jacqueline. To start to find emails of past friends and important people in my life so I can compile my list. That feels so doable. I like my body relaxes when I read some of these because I'm like, oh yeah, I can actually do this. I can actually like, and so the frame that I would offer for this, and mostly it's counselors and parents, but if you're talking to students about this, is like, what is the thing that you could literally do tonight? What's the next step you could take? Start to map out where my veggie garden will go. Great. Yeah. Pick a spot, right? Go outside and be like, could it be here? My wife just built a little garden right outside our kitchen, which is like it was like a lifted bed because it's like all concrete out there. Yeah. And it wasn't too expensive because it was built out of wood and we got some help building it. So okay, y'all get the idea here. All right, let me close the chat. Here we go. There, whoops. All right, I'm going to come out of this mode just so that folks can see the thing. Whoops. Sorry, for some reason. Okay. It's because I'm at the end of the presentation. Okay, that's why it wouldn't go. Now, for counselors, for those of you watching, you'll see these slides. I'm going to just click these. These are going to be hidden, but you're going to have access to these. So if you want, you can also talk to students about ideas for free or low-cost summer experiences that might help you stand out. And you'll see lots of ideas here on these slides. And again, these slides are sort of optional, and it's got a little bit of context about pay-to-play experiences. Look at this beautiful image. It's so funny. And why they're maybe not necessarily the best approach. All of this has been gathered for you on this page. Let me just show you this. I'll just research it here. Whoops. Uncommon. There we go. Okay. So I'll put this in the chat. But here's the sort of like the workbook / handout / takeaway from this session. Okay. So if you click here, counselors, you'll see the Google slides that we've just walked through, all these beautiful slides that Tom spent this week on. You'll see these all linked right there. Okay, let me close some of these tabs. There we go. And then, like I said, if you want to add your school logo, you just pop it in. Most of these on the bottom left corner, it's like blank here, so you can just pop it in right there. And then be like, we collaborated with College Essay Guy on this presentation. And then everything that I just shared is walked through on this. So step 1, get your values. Step 2, learn what colleges are looking for. Step 3, these are all those summer ideas organized by values. Pick the ideas or experiences. Oh, and if you're doing this in a group setting, hey, maybe share out with others. And that's the moment where you can kind of pause in the workshop to be like, all right, turn to a partner and share some ideas. And then here, we've got the roles and identities list linked, the same one that I shared with you. By doing X project or experience, I would grow as this role or identity, plus I would show colleges collaboration or whatever that thing is. And again, another share out moment if students want to. And then if they're feeling stuck, then you can give them that roles and identities list. And that was the one that had just basically that huge list. This is the values one, but list of ideas to just get their brains going so that they can brainstorm stuff. And that's it. The next step is like they write down what is the next step. And that's, they'll hopefully have some stuff. So again, that's shared in the chat. And again, the slides are linked at the top. Yeah, so curious. Yay, Andrea's giving us all caps. Thanks so much for sharing my counselor. This is really helpful. Cool, we made this for you. We hope you like it. And yeah, I'll just throw it into the chat once more. We're trying to create more of these like slides because we spend time creating them and we're like, let's just create them more so that people can, share them out. So I'd love to hear from y'all. Are there other slides or presentations like this that you're like, oh, it would be great to have the CEG version of this? What is that particular slideshow that you'd like to have? Let us know. We've got, a junior night slides, for instance. Are there other slides that you'd like us to create? Let us know. We're taking orders now. Oh, I'm so glad. Someone, but just messaging to us said, this has definitely been one of my favorites. I think you mean favorite presentations. Andrea says, I definitely like to see junior night slides. I like union night slides. We're doing union night tonight. They just have.
We kind of do have junior night slides, so.
Yeah, we can. I mean, we're doing a junior night soon, so maybe we can. Maybe we can make that happen in like 2 weeks. Stay tuned to your email.
Yeah.
Ooh, slides for each grade. Great idea. How to spend sophomore year effectively. That's good. I like that. That's pretty niche. That's not a bad idea.
Yeah, and just so you know, for whoever put the grade level request, Nora, actually the extracurricular guide that we have, it's really comprehensive and many pages long, but kind of like Ethan modeled out, using Control F to find the terms that you want, as well as anchor links. At the beginning, there's kind of like a bank of, oh, if you're interested in robotics or whatnot, you can click on that and it gives you short description of what robotics entails, what it can help you cultivate, and then some ways that you can maybe explore it more deeply. There's also grade level sections too, so guidance for 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th graders around extracurriculars.
I'm definitely hearing you all on the grade maybe we'll do a quick poll. Ooh, Rebecca, we've got 8 minutes. Can we do a quick poll? Let's just, okay. And I want y'all to be really real with us. If we created, I'm not saying we're definitely going to create them, but this is the potential next step, is like run a poll with audience to see if they would actually want this. So here's the poll, Rebecca, if you wouldn't mind. If CEG created grade specific slides for what you can do in each year, would you use them? Yes, no, maybe, or not sure. If we could throw up that poll the next few minutes, that would be sweet.
So Judy just asked a really good question that I kind of want to
do it.
talk
Go.
about.
We're in Q&A time. Go.
Yeah, she says, how do you get teens to start brainstorming these if they tell you that their perma is only from the online world and gaming? And I'm actually really glad you brought this up, Judy, because I just sat down a couple days ago with Deshaun Alexander. He works as a assistant dean at Lafayette College of West Coast Recruitment. And we actually talked a lot about how there are many students increasingly over the years who, understandably, some of it's because of the pandemic. A lot of it is just cultural shifts in more and more opportunities to engage with community online is becoming more and more of a norm. And so my advice here isn't necessarily, ideally, I think there is a lot of value in engaging with people in a more personal setting, IRL. But there's also, I know many students who a lot of kind of the key here is less about like pivoting and changing the way that you spend your time and more about making sure, like I said before, that the admission officer reading understands what it has brought you. What skills have you cultivated through it? What values how have you explored it? Showing the receipts in a way through your writing, through examples that you share. That's a big piece here because I've actually met many students who like their big world is Discord and they've helped build communities out there and they know people from all over the world and they've really spent a lot of time and energy pouring time into something online that maybe to someone who is from a different generation, like I used to play video games when I was a kid, I'm not as connected to online communities now, especially when admissions officers, they do have that kind of generational disconnect. It's about kind of speaking the language and explaining to them what they've been able to cultivate that mirrors some of the skills and values that an admission officer might be used to reading from more in-person things. So it's not necessarily forcing them to get outside. I think that's not a horrible idea, but yeah, positioning how they spend their time differently.
Yeah, that's a great point. And Marcy's asking a similar question, or a question that has overlap with this, is like, how do these particular activities, some of the ones that we've given examples of, how do they feature into college applications if they don't seem like something that's sort of like an item for an activities list? And what I want to say is, first of all, there's actually a pretty broad range of what's quote unquote okay in college applications. So to give you an example, we put this list together a few years ago about activities that count in college admissions, but students don't often think they count. So things like, these are from actual students who've submitted on their applications, playing instruments is maybe an obvious one, but like, glass blowing, fashion blogging, selling stuff on eBay, composing EDM. Like these are all things that students actually put on their applications, yoga, mountain biking, and that actually count. Sometimes I'll tell students, you can put in your additional information section if you feel like it's not quote unquote official, but just to Tom's point, whatever the thing is, just make the connection to like, what is the need that it fulfills for you? What is the value that it brings into your life? And show if it has meaning and purpose to you, just articulate briefly what that meaning and purpose is. Let's just go maybe back and forth, Tom, with questions, with Q's and A's.
Sure. Yeah, most of them are answered. We just got a shout out from Kevin for the podcast episodes that you've done with Cassidy. So
yay, I'm so excited to hear back from Cassidy, to hear where she got in. I didn't hear back from her early schools, so I don't think she's in at the early schools. I think she would have let me know. But I'm planning to record an update podcast because somebody recently was like, how did things turn out with Cassidy? And I'm like, I don't know, waiting to find out with everybody else. If you haven't heard that one, that's and by the way, there's like new podcasts coming. We're taking a short break just because it's the new year and we're, but I'm recording 2 new podcasts tomorrow. that are going to be on some cool things. But essentially, Cassidy, we've done a series with her on working through the application process. More on the podcast here. I'll put in the chat.
Lissy has a great question. How about advice for high achieving kids who want to take something like weightlifting as an elective, but are interested in attending a college like Georgia Tech? Should they be advised to leave this for an extracurricular activity? My advice around this is if the student is engaged with all 5 what we call academic solids throughout all 4 years of high school, most colleges, including the most highly selective ones and places like Georgia Tech, would be happy with seeing a schedule that aligns with that. So 4 years of English, 4 years of math, 4 years of social studies or history, 4 years of language tends to be an area where some students drop off a little early, but many colleges, including Georgia Tech, still would value seeing 4 years, and then 4 years of science. So continuing on with weightlifting, especially if this has been a big source of camaraderie, fitness, like health, like this is really important to the student and they have room in their schedule and still have the 5 solids, I would say that's okay. If the student is deciding to replace a solid course because they met their high school's graduation requirements, even if it is an area outside of math and science, which are definitely ones that a place like Georgia Tech would be keeping an eye out for, it's not a bad choice. I think a question would be to ask, whether or not it does make sense for the student to possibly add on another math and science course as a senior if they feel like they have the readiness, capability, interest in doing that. That would probably be seen as slightly more favorable. But as long as I'd say 5 solid academic courses are there, ready to go, it wouldn't be seen as a slide in, academic rigor.
Yeah, Erica's asking a great one. Erica's like, yeah, could you guys also create monthly email templates that we could just send out to students? That would be cool, right? Let me just, great, done. All right, check this out. On our hub, this is, for some of you have seen this, some of you haven't seen this maybe. This is our public and charter counselor schools hub. This is turning into a total counselor webinar. Sorry, students, but hey, that's what's happening. If you opt in here, you maybe have already opted in at some point, you'll see our top 10 resources for counselors. But this hub includes great counseling books, online resources, blogs, podcasts. Ooh, look at this. Email templates organized by month and grade. Check this out. Once you opt into this, oh gosh, sorry, I have to pull it up in my drive. Once you opt into this, you'll get a link to this set of templates. And the reason why we put an opt-in there is we wanted to make sure that, we wanted to make sure people were actually using them. So you'll get access to this drive. And if you go into right now it's February, and let's say you want to message, I don't know, all your grades, you click this and here you go. Hi, blank students. Hi, Eagles, whatever your school mascot is. Here's your intro, just your friendly neighborhood counselor here, just checking in. Here's what to be doing right now. So basically you can check in and name and pick any of these things or just delete them. If you're like, I don't need to put this in there because we've already got our own version of that. You just go in and delete it. Don't delete ours. You just copy and paste it for yourself. But, yes, I'd love to pick up some of these. So you'll find this linked. And again, it's in the chat, but our hub is linked there. You'll also find lots of social media and flyer templates. So if you want to advertise, I don't know, some event, just boom, you can click there. What else? Stuff on how to create a school profile, on applications. There's some great brainstorming resources. Stuff for helping students understand different applications. There's a crash course on standardized testing. If you haven't checked it out, check out our Paying for College guide in 4 steps. It's so darn thorough. If you want a crash course in paying for college, or you have parents who are like, how do I figure out the financial aid stuff? Check out the Paying for College guide. It's basically the best financial aid book that I've ever read. And it's got memes. It's wonderful. Shout out to Amanda who created that. And there's lots more on scholarships, college fairs, scholarship essays, the personal statement, etc. So this is one to bookmark, friends, dear counselors, if you haven't already, and you can opt into the email templates. Sorry if you've already seen that, but since we had a bunch of counselors on, I figured I'd share it.
Kristen brings up a good point in the chat. I just want to touch on, I know we're running short on time. Do you think it's an issue if students' extracurriculars are more in the community and not at school? I actually think that getting outside of your school walls is a really great way for, kind of as I mentioned with some of the examples before, for students to get to engage with populations that are different from them and not as immediately accessible or relatable. So for that reason, I actually think getting outside of your school in some capacity is a really great area for students to showcase all the things that we mentioned, their values, the admission nutrients, PERMA. I would say probably engaging in something in the immediate school community is something to think about. I've worked with students who have lots of like research things that they're doing at different college campuses, and they're not spending as much time with their immediate school community. There is a benefit to that type of like community engagement that is more, I guess, for lack of a better term, in-house. So ideally, I'd say encouraging students to get involved at least one thing that maybe is more sustained and engaged within their school. That's the thing that they excel the most in, that they enjoy spending their time doing the most, can help them build relationships with their peers so that high school isn't as isolating maybe. But definitely, engaging with things outside of school is really great ways to really, I think, get more original ideas of how to spend your time. And then lastly, a couple of questions were about awards. Is it bad I don't have any awards? Do I need awards? What awards and honors are best? I used to work at a high school that was a very selective high school in Seattle, where we had students write in that box, the school does not offer or award honors and awards. And the students from this high school were admitted widely to highly selective colleges and universities. And I can say, as a former admission officer, there's definitely some awards that students will have, like big name scholarships, such as the Gates Scholarship or Coca-Cola, or maybe they reached a certain level of USACO in computer science or whatever it is, that can, be eye-catching. But in general, honors and awards is really kind of looked over pretty quickly. And I'd say there's very few that are these huge door swinging, tipping the needle things that you can be working towards. A lot more of the focus of a way an admission officer will be looking at your time spent is through your activities. And whether or not they're connected to a formal award or honor isn't the end all be all. And I wouldn't say that's something to, like, if you are looking at your application and are like, oh, this is a big deficit of mine, but you're really engaged with things that kind of mirror and reflect all the advice that we shared today, I wouldn't argue that chasing after awards just to have the award is a way that you need to be spending your time. I think it can be spent a lot more wisely and productively.
And he asked, totally different topic, but is CEG hiring anytime soon? If so, maybe a little promotional break and let us counselors know. Thanks, Innie. Here's our careers page. That, first of all, that's like the greatest compliment. I heart this so much that you asked me that, because it means that, I don't know, that you like me and like us and want to hang out with us more. So if you click the link in that page, I'm just going to show you what's here currently. So what does it mean to work at colleges? Well, what are some things that we're hiring for right now? So right now, like this month, we're hiring for college essay specialists. We've got an awesome team of college essay specialists we love, but we're like, wanting to, if more students want to work with us, we've got that opening. So if you know somebody who is a really amazing and has lots of experience working with students on essays, that's one. We also have been, we've been working on this one for a little while, but we've got a workshops and matchlighters operations manager position that we're hiring for. We're always looking for volunteers for matchlighters. And if you want to get in good with us, by the way, if you are like working in our volunteer program, and this is like an opportunity to work with one student for 10 hours this year, this is a student who is low income, often a student who's first generation. We'd love to have you work in that capacity, especially if you're a counselor who's like, I don't have access to, low income students because of the population that you work with maybe. Now, we're not currently hiring for these, but if you're interested in any of these, we'd love to hear about it. So we have our family parent liaison role, blog content writer role, and then college counselor. We particularly in recent months have been looking for somebody on the West Coast. If you're a college counselor and you're like, I don't know, maybe sort of looking for new work and you're potentially interested in working with us, there's an email where you can send your resume to. And if for some reason you're not able to find the email, you can always send it to help@collegeessayguy.com. So I'm not going to say we're always hiring, because we're not always literally hiring, but we are often hiring. And it's sort of like an interesting thing where it's not often perfect, where like the time that we're hiring is the time when someone's available. So even if you think like in the next 6 months or a year, you're like, yeah, I might be interested in working with College Essay Guy, send us your resume. because when we do hire for new positions, we look back at the resumes that we have quote unquote on file, and we really do look at them. It's not just sort of lip service where we're like, yeah, we're going to keep your resume on file. Like we really do look back at those and we kind of comb through them. So yes, please. We're at time, we're over time, but thank you. Oh, Joelle, calling that these are joy-filled resources, that fills my heart with such joy too. So I hope that you feel that, and I sense that you do. Can you apply for a job even if you're a high school student? We don't at the moment, Mosena, unfortunately, have any positions for high school students. In the future, maybe, I don't know, we will potentially do internships or something. But I would say the best way to connect with us, if you're a high school student, is to join one of our Pay What You Can courses that are coming up in a couple months. And you'll see info on that coming out on the email list. What else? What else? Please keep it up. We will keep it up. You're welcome. Oh, we're just getting lots of love in the chat, Tom. Tom, thanks for being here for another fun session. And yeah, we really welcome input. We'd love for you to go and try out these slides and use them and make them your own. And, you know, don't feel like you have to like follow the recipe exactly. An analogy that I was using this last week with our retreat is like, we want you to make a good quiche. And so what I mean by that is like, you know, if you were to follow the recipe exactly for making a quiche, it might be that if it says like put 6 whole eggs in there, that you literally put 6 whole eggs with shells and all. This is from my friend Duncan, by the way. And we don't want you to like precisely do the thing if you feel like it's not going to make a good quiche. So take these resources, take the thing, make them your own, and then email me. Let us know how you use them and how we can make them better. So we hope that you kind of use them, change them, make them, and do your own thing with them. All right. That's it. We'll call it there. Thanks so much again for being here. We heart you, and stay tuned because in a couple weeks, I think we're going to do a junior night and we'd love to see you there. All right. Bye.